Second item, the NON in the word none. Now it doesn't look a lot lighter than the rest, but we can kind of presume that there was something a little bit different about the ink on that particular word that when it was scanned in made it look a little bit different, and therefore the program handled it a little bit different. Let's see. There that is, right there. The other item is the 1 on the end of the certificate number. Now this one is of special interest because this is one of the few items that someone might actually be interested in forging. Yes, it is on the edge of a word, like some of the other items that we see in grayscale. Still, it does seem odd that it hasn't been converted to all black. Well, there are a couple possible explanations for this. The first has to do with it being a stamped number. We see that in every other instance in the entire document, the items that are stamped tend to be separated out into a separate layer and left as straight graphic information, not converted to black pixels. But we also see that there's inconsistency in most of these cases. For example, when this date stamp is converted to another layer and left as graphic pixels, the 1 is left behind. On the other side, actually the 19 and the 1 are both left behind. On the other side, it's just the 1 that's left behind. So it's not entirely consistent with the stamps. The second possible explanation, of course, is that somebody did alter this 1. And in that scenario, people looking for a forgery ought to look for a forgery done from one of the 10 birth certificate numbers that begin with 611064. We have some other information coming, though, that I think will probably shed more light on which of these two explanations is likely to be correct. Very quickly now, several other things. The choice of items that are in the layers. Except for the 1 at the end of the birth certificate number, the choice of items that are in the layers make no sense from the point of view of a human being picking things out and editing them. They're pretty much random. Actually, as we've seen, though, they're not random. They match the work of a software program that pulled things out based on whether they were dark enough and separate enough to identify them as items that ought to be made all black. The existence of the layers themselves. National Review Online did a similar scan of a document they picked up pretty much at random, which produced very, very similar layers to those seen in this document. And it wasn't difficult for them to do it. For this reason, although we don't have an exact duplication of what we have here, we've got a very, very similar proof of concept that gives further support to the machine scenario that I've outlined. Information in the document claims that it was created by Quartz PDF context running on a Macintosh computer. This information could have been forged, but that would require a smart forger, which contradicts the existence of the layers, which required a stupid forger who forgot or just didn't think to flatten it. The creation and last modified time in the document information are identical. This, once again, supports the machine and software hypothesis and not the human one. The size of the file, and this is very significant, is about the same as that of an optimized JPEG file. This is strong support that the document has been through some kind of optimization process. The quality is, in my opinion, about the same as a JPEG, but it's higher contrast. Finally, if we hadn't dealt enough blows to the human forgery theory, along comes an item that's really fatal in its own right. And that item's this. We actually have a high-resolution copy of the Obama long-form birth certificate. This was one of the earliest images published on the internet, and it was published by the Associated Press on April 27th. It is very, very high resolution, much more high resolution than the PDF file that everybody's been talking about. Aside from showing us lots of detail, this means that it could not possibly have been created from the lower resolution PDF file that has everybody in an uproar. Of course, this is obvious even apart from the resolution, as this particular image does not have the green background. Here's what this image basically looks like, except I've actually reduced the resolution on this in order to compare it directly with the green background certificate. This is not the highest resolution image. The highest resolution image is out there. Again, this is reduced resolution. If we resize and overlay the two images, we find that except for the missing green safety paper background and a bit of a slight warp, the white background document is identical in every way to the PDF file. And you can see that as I click them on and off. It's clear from a close analysis of the two that the white background document is by far the better image. And this by itself is fatal to the idea that the layers in the green background document indicate a forgery, because none of the anomalies that people are talking about occur in the document with the white background. So in order to create a forgery in the PDF, somebody would have had to go to an unbelievable amount of effort just to create a forgery that's a duplicate in every way to a much higher quality document that they already had. Since this is completely absurd, we've got an independent confirmation of the conclusions that we've already reached by close analysis of the PDF. Here is a summary of our findings. You can look down the column of human being. Very little there that makes any sense of any of these things having been done by a human being. On the other hand, every single item that we have looked at is plausible to have been done by a computer, by a software process. Does this mean that we've solved our mystery? Not necessarily. Let's not be quite so hasty in declaring a solution just yet. We need to ask the question, what if? But what if? What if the layers were created by a machine, but the document was also tampered with by a human being? Do we have any proof that's happened? Well, once again, we go back and we look at that question. That works for some of the elements, but not for all of them. And in particular, the much higher resolution Associated Press image is fatal to that theory. It just doesn't make any sense. So in the final analysis, not only do we not have proof of the hypothesis that the existence of layers in the document means that it's a fraud, the answer is it isn't even plausible. So someone will ask me, John, are you saying that all of these dozens and dozens of videos on YouTube about Barack Obama's birth certificate being a fraud are dead wrong? And the answer is, for the ones that claim fraud, specifically because of the layers phenomenon, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. But note what we've not said. We've not declared that Barack Obama's birth certificate is genuine. We have not declared that he is eligible to be president. We've simply said that based on the actual evidence, the fraud by layers theory is simply wrong. It can't be supported with the facts. If you still don't believe the last statement that I made, go back and watch our videos again. Try to find any serious flaw in our reasoning. I have no doubt that if you watch and understand the videos and fairly evaluate the evidence, you can't help but come to the same conclusion, because it's been step by step logically done. Okay, at this point we've discovered that 5 of the original 8 major charges don't hold water. Now bear in mind that these are not all the charges that have been made, And remember, we've said absolutely nothing about the possibility of a forgery before the document got to the scanner. At some point, we may talk about that as well. In our next video, we will put Barack Obama's birth certificate back on trial with the 3 remaining charges of our original 8. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to our next video.